And the meeting is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
I am very grateful for Christian Science and how I can now look back on my life to see all the ways God has been with me at every stage. In my mid-20s, I was made foreman of a construction crew. I had 8 people to sort of corral into getting all these pieces ready to pour concrete into at the end of the day. At first, it was so inefficient, and those guys had no real interest in doing the work. So each day I tried to figure out the proper order of events needed to do it. As I got more efficient, I would tell my boss he could take one of the workers and put him on another crew. After about 5 months, it ended up just being me doing the work, usually in less time than it took the whole group to do it. After that experience, I thought for a long time that the lesson to take from it was basically, I'm a bad manager, and it was probably better if I work alone. It occurred to me the other day, however, that this is yet another example of the way that God was preparing me to be ready to work for this church. Here in Plainfield, I've been given the wonderful opportunity to put that love for working efficiently to use, and to do it in a way that is still working with others who are all a part of this team that only God could have put together. I couldn't have known to search for this church. In fact, I didn't even know what I was getting into when I arrived here in 2013. But in every single way, these last 5.5 years have been the best time of my life, and I'm so grateful to God for bringing me here. And I also can now be grateful for all those years of preparation, even though they weren't easy. Those experiences made me ready for Christian Science and the meaningful work done in Plainfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Shahidat from Maryland, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for those readings. I am so grateful to have found the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independence and to have this church in my life. This church was an answer to desperate prayer about a decade ago when I was going through a health scare. And I can honestly say that had God not led me to this church, I would have left Christian Science entirely. Because even though I graduated from a branch church Sunday school and was involved in Christian Science oral throughout my university years, I somehow never learned how to make science real and to use this science in a practical way. If that was ever taught, I somehow completely missed it. Whereas here, I continually learn how Christian Science is meant to be practiced. And I am just so very grateful. Late last year, I dropped comprehensive insurance on my 12-year-old vehicle. At the time, my insurance agent told me to sign up for a separate roadside assistance program, and I just kind of shrugged that off. I didn't think I needed that because I didn't drive the car that often. This year, I had one occasion to use that program, and I was grateful that I had listened, I had paid, and signed up for it. That came later when I had a strong urging to follow that insurance agent's advice, and I was thankful to have done that. Last weekend, I was driving home from a movie, and all of a sudden my brakes became unresponsive. I pressed on the brakes, and the car would, instead of slowing down, the car sped up. That happened a couple of times. I was on the Baltimore-Washington Parkway going through a particularly rural area where it's not very well lit. I was able to pull over to the side, and when I couldn't stop the car along the side of the road, I saw an empty field ahead of me, and I drove the car there, and the grass slowed the car down until I could pull the emergency brake, and the car could come to a stop on its own. And then for a second or two, I thought, well, the Friday before Christmas, who can I call to come get me in the middle of nowhere? And that's when it occurred to me, well, I had obeyed the urging earlier to sign up for this roadside assistance service. So I called the roadside assistance service, and they sent an emergency truck out to tow my car. And the technician had mentioned that I seemed very calm and didn't panic when my car brakes became unresponsive. And I just smiled at him. What he didn't realize, I didn't mention, was that I had been working with the first commandment and getting to really understand what it means when I say God is all. So even though internally I wanted to freak out when my brakes didn't work, I was calm knowing that God had my back and there was nothing to worry about. So my car was towed to a mechanic who worked on it, and today I picked up the car and it's brand spanking new. And I just wanted to say how grateful I am once again to be a member of this church and everything I've learned here about how to use science. I'm very grateful, and I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening. I am most grateful for the Christmas season which has just passed. The Christmas Eve service was most delightful. I especially enjoyed the Christmas carol sung first in French and then in English. So often we forget that much of our Christmas music was first performed in some other language other than English. Silent Night, for example. Christmas Day was a day that can be best described by the term so often quoted from Mrs. Eddy's works, inquietude. I am most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Candy from Wisconsin, go ahead.
Good evening. This morning I woke up feeling like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Like every morning, I read my lesson, which this morning was on Christian Science, the Comforter. And although the light was starting to peek through, the pressure was still there. I was led to listen to the Christmas Eve candlelight service. And as the children sang Away in the Manger, the tears flowed, the pressure released, and my joy and happiness returned. The beauty, purity, and innocence of those voices deeply touched and healed me. In Isaiah it says, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. I would like to thank this church for all it is doing for mankind and to make Mary Baker Eddy's Christian Science easily available, actually, to the world. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Janet from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I, too, am grateful for the service this evening and for the Christmas Eve service. It was very beautiful. I'm also grateful for so many blessings I received over the years. One blessing was recent. For the past 2 years, my husband and I have been preparing his parents' home for sale. This was difficult logistically because the home is in another city, actually 275 miles from our home, just one way. But we never had a problem driving. We spent many hours on the road. Many legal challenges and other things would come up during this 2-year period, and they were troubling at times, but through the help of my practitioner, I was able to keep my focus on God. She reminded me to trust Him, listen to Him, and not interject my will. In September of this year, the house was placed on the market, and it sold in less than a month. The closing was scheduled for the end of October, but 1 week before closing, our agent called to say that the bank had an issue with the people who were buying our buyer's home. You know, this would have caused me great concern, but I had been through this 2-year experience of just pure joy of seeing how God's law operates. So I remained calm, trusted God completely, and acknowledged Him in all His ways. 1 month after our scheduled closing and 4 days after Thanksgiving, the sale went through without a problem. Thanks be to God. I'm so grateful to God. I just can't say it enough. I'm grateful to God for His love. I am extremely grateful to my practitioner for her dedication and love of God, and for this Plainfield Christian Science Church, independent, where I'm continuing to learn many valuable lessons. I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike from New York, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm so grateful for the meeting tonight, for the beautiful readings, and the whole music and everything. On page 619 of our textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy, there is a testimony about a child being healed of the croup very quickly. The mother read the textbook in this emergency due to being the only scientist in the area. I read this many times over the years to our, now I understand, God's daughter in times of crisis with great results. Many nights as at bedtime, I would also read to her beginning on page 330, The Platform of Christian Science. It worked every time. Even if she came and got me in the middle of the night due to insomnia, she would fall asleep within the first few points of the platform. I would always read it to the end and was able to observe that even if the sleep was restless early on, it was always peaceful way before I finished reading. Mrs. Eddy introduces the platform with, quote, "When the following platform is understood in the letter and the spirit bear witness, the infallibility of divine metaphysics will be demonstrated," unquote. The infallibility of divine metaphysics is demonstrated even if not understood. As much as I had faith in God and loved Mrs. Eddy, I had no understanding of how or why this worked, so used it trusting that the truth would heal due to the uplift of reading the weekly lesson sermons, and I was using the ones from 1898 to 1900, but the same topic as was being used by the other church. While one might wonder how these could apply today, work it did because I began in science when our daughter was in first grade. Up until that time, through preschool, playgroups, and kindergarten, she got every belief of cold, etc., that everyone else did. Not long into Christian Science, she may have missed one more day due to belief in illness until she graduated. An added factor was that she never was vaccinated, and one might say bullied by certain fellow pupils with predictions of getting sick because of that. She rarely did, was immediately healed of any threats through Christian Science, and unfortunately none of her classmates that I knew of were as fortunate staying healthy. I'm so grateful now with all the classes, hints, and testimonies shared here at Plainfield to finally begin to understand Christian Science based on its spiritual platform. An example of this is as simply along with a lesson I'm doing the daily duties every morning. All the random things I used to read about are now being woven into a most beautiful and perfect web. I marvel at seeing where each piece fits into the puzzle, excited knowing how much more magnificent it will continue to become as I see where more of the infinite pieces fit together. I'm so grateful to be here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Heidi from Maryland, go ahead.
Oh, holy tenor voice last night. There was so much peace there. And what a beautiful voice. And that's not an easy song to sing. I had to do it in 6th grade by myself, so I know. But there wasn't a dry eye in my room, let me tell you. And the chills that went through me, it was just beautiful. And I'm so grateful for that service and that I was able to tune in over the telephone here in Maryland. I couldn't be more grateful for independent Christian Science with the instruction that comes with it from many people, not just our practitioners, but it taught me how to use this science. I, too, wouldn't be a scientist today. I would have dropped off and gone deep into New Age, and I'd still be reading tarot cards somewhere. But because this church saved me, the dear practitioner, and all of you, that I'm still here after 40 years. I couldn't be more grateful for this instruction, the love, the light, and last night's service. all the watches and the round table and the Bible study, and it goes on and on, our website. I just couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you all.
Thank you. Dede from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm thankful that my study of Christian Science in this church is leading me to look beyond the surface of every situation I experience in order to see God in all things. I'm learning that no matter how good or bad a situation seems, my greatest responsibility is to work to see what God is showing me, telling me, or trying to teach me. When I work continuously to learn the intended lesson, I always find a reason to be more grateful to God and give Him thanks. This is a new way of living for me that's giving me more comfort, courage, and confidence as I progress in science and in life. Thank you, Amanda, for tonight's readings. Thank you for all of the testimonies given so far, and again for the continuous work going on in this church that is blessing my life and strengthening me and this world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening, and thank you for the music and readings onward and upward. I want to offer my heartfelt gratitude for our practitioners who have kept this Christmas season a holy one, and my practitioner who has given such wonderful support in keeping us all close to God by showing us how Mrs. Eddy taught us how to keep Christmas sacred, quiet, and peaceful. There were many challenges to be met, but this is the first time ever that upon waking up on Christmas morning that I immediately thought about all mankind and praying for peace on earth, goodwill to men. How it is God who maintains this peace and shows us how to live it through the Christ. Christ Jesus said in John 17:21 that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. Thank you. Love to all.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Hello. Last week our computer was hacked. This resulted in our being offline for 3 days, and I sure missed the Plainfield site. Thanks to a competent, willing, and available family member, we were able to reset our computer to factory settings, a great relief in allaying fear of consequences. This was after an initial misuse of one of our accounts was detected and stopped, and a couple of phone calls confirmed to us that the suspected hacking had indeed taken place. There was plenty left to do, involving lots of questions we didn't find it easy to answer. The process didn't go quickly or smoothly, and we didn't do an outstanding job of listening for God's direction. A turnaround came when it occurred to me to thank God for every little step forward. It was pretty basic, of course, but things became more harmonious then, and some better ideas came to thought. Also, we no longer felt like we were going through hell, and several satisfying improvements and corrections over what we previously had resulted. This is the way God's law works when we at last find our way to successfully yielding to it. A Plainfield practitioner support was essential. A special thanks to all who contribute to the Plainfield site and to God, without whom none of it would even exist. A good evening to all.
Thank you. Craig.
Thank you so much. It started with the beautiful music that felt like a child was singing. and it was very touching and moving, and just put me there as that little child singing prayer to God. Thank you, Jim. The lesson that was read, Onward and Upward, it's one of the great things about this church. No day seems to be stagnant. And as Jesus told his disciples, go out to all the world and heal. Yes, I feel the same thing is being told us here through our practitioners and through our Mary Baker Eddy's works. And encouragement from all the dear living people that all around that are doing this, living this Christian Science. I never feel discouraged. If for a moment my own efforts don't feel like they're successful, I just realize it's just the devil's attempt to make me believe that I can't do what God has asked, which is impossible. And I continue, and it always works out with the help of a practitioner or the unity. The other Sunday, I was feeling ill. I had been healed of constipation before, and it had come again. Well, I was given 413, line 7 from Side of Health before, while I was being treated. So I worked with it. Didn't think I shouldn't take a practitioner's time. But I did. I worked with it, and I worked with it for 2 days. And I was sure it had been heard before, but I wasn't quite in the right spirit for whatever reason. And I was getting better, but not fully healed, until we did our Unity Watch. And then all of a sudden, my whole system worked beautifully, which told me that I so need to walk in unity and in childlikeness. So when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them, Christ Jesus said. And it's so true. When we get together, we are a great power for this world, allowing each of us to be an influence for good. Not just in our bodies, but throughout the world. I thank God for being reminded of that in this blessed place. We can always progress.
Thank you. This is Bruce. I'm very thankful to God for a wonderful blessing that happened actually just today. I found out a couple days ago that around here there was a problem with the electric service and several lights around the property weren't working. And I never got too worked up over it, but still it was weighing on the back of my mind. So before I came over here, I turned on our website and I read the watching point that's being featured on our website right now. It happens to be watching point number 1. And it talked about being joyous. And that was an essential quality of using Christian Science and practicing it, was to be joyous. And that was a wonderful message for me. So I came over this morning, first of all, just thanking God for this opportunity to work, and also insisting that I was going to be joyous and listen to God's voice. And being grateful for the opportunity of whatever it was going to teach me and learn what I did. So I just started going through the electrical service in the building here, happily, discovering what was there, testing each item. And it was only a matter of minutes, actually, when I found what the problem was, and it was very easily resolved, and everything's working now. I was obviously very happy for that. And then another thing that I'm very happy for was later on I was relating this story to a friend and member of this church, and this lady told me, ever since we heard about that, we were praying for you. I can't tell you how much joy that gave me. It lifted my heart, lifted my spirit. So not only did God show the way to resolve the problem, but he also showed me how much love and gratitude and friendship and brotherhood pervades this whole church and everything that's going on here. And it's quite a lovely thing that God is doing here in this church. I'm very thankful for all the good. Suzanne from Vermont, go ahead.
Good evening. I wanted to express my gratitude for those beautiful readings. Just really touched my heart. And I wanted to thank the church and the practitioners and all the good work that's going on here for a wonderful year of progress, of fellowship, teaching, and blessings. And I love the constant challenge and a challenge to my thinking and a constant prod to keep going and learning and just that onward and upward feeling that was expressed in the readings tonight. I feel that from this church, and I'm grateful since coming to this church to share Christian Science with others, the laws of the universe with others, more than I ever have. And I do it more and more. And to me, that is one of the greatest blessings I have received from the strength and teaching of Christian Science, of pure Christian Science in this church. And it's been a wonderful year, and I thank you all who contribute to everything going on in this church, for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori from Virginia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm thankful for my study with Plainfield Church and my practitioner, and for a not-so-lonely Christmas without family or friends, actually the perfect Christmas. I listened to the beautiful and healing candlelight service on Christmas Eve, followed by a holy day of study for me in Christian Science, bringing me the greatest peace and joy. I'm happy to have followed Mary Baker Eddy's preference in spending this holy day in solitary study in Christian Science.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for all the testimonies. Thank you, Amanda, for the encouraging, uplifting readings. I'm so grateful for all that I have learned, and to learn that in healing, all that I'm doing is realizing the already existing perfection. God made it all well. And this realization has helped me to nickname these challenges that come powerlessness and nothingness. So when I feel a certain way, I know that it is powerlessness and nothingness knocking at the door of my thought. Recently, I had a feeling all of a sudden this heaviness, tiredness, which I would have ordinarily gave in to. But this time, knowing that it's powerlessness and nothingness knocking, I declared the truth of God's powerful presence, and that is a law unto myself. Soon I had the thought to write on the forum. I prayed for what would bless someone, and I went ahead and did that, shortly rejoicing gratefully for all that God has done and continues to do. It was just a bright light, as if a bright light came over and destroying all even the smallest wrong thoughts, uplifted my thinking, and I was left with nothing but joy. I am so grateful for everything that I have learned since joining this church, for the real practice of Christian Science. And it's wonderful that when we stick to it, yes, we are rewarded. I'm sure that what we are doing here is blessing mankind all over. And I cannot be grateful enough for God, Christ Jesus, Mrs. Eddy, and her message of salvation to the whole world. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
Okay, I'll start with our website bulletin board. The first, I'm not sure where it's from, but someone new. Thank you so much for the beautiful, sweet moving service tonight. A holy Christmas to all at Plainfield and all that listen and love the truth. And then Pennsylvania, the Christmas Eve service was just lovely. The children's singing was so sweet, and the beautiful carol verse in French brought tears to my eyes. And along with all the other elements, this was time well spent. Until yesterday, when I consulted the 88th manual on the subject, I was skeptical of even having the idea of a Christmas Eve service. Thank you. Now that we are independent, we can have one. And then Florida, thank you for a beautiful Christmas Eve service. We felt like we were there in church with you all. It put a blessing on our Christmas. Thank you for the love. And then another from Florida, thank you for bringing the Christmas joy, peace, and love into our hearts. The whole program was a wonderful blessing. And then this is a letter from Wales, the UK. I enclose a donation for the church. I am so grateful for the website which I go to every day, the Bible studies, roundtable, and everything that is so generously provided. Wishing you and all at Plainfield Church a blessed Christmas, with much love. And then this is someone new from Missouri. Dear Plainfield Christian Science Church independent members, I am so, and she uses 10 O's, I am so happy to have found you online. I'm not sure exactly how or when I stumbled upon your YouTube videos, which eventually led me to your incredible website that offers 10 more O's, many fantastic and inspirational items to watch, listen to, read, and/or order. It may have been through a mention in the banner, which I have followed for many years, but no matter. I couldn't be more grateful to have finally been led to you. I live near the Principia St. Louis campus and came into Christian Science as a result of meeting a Prin Town and Country Church Sunday School student back in the fall of 1983, who had just become one of my new horseback riding students. I've attached my testimony by way of introduction. I joined the Mother Church and took class instruction as soon as possible and have experienced and witnessed many wonderful healings over the years. However, prior to, and especially when I was on the executive board of the church, the branch church, 1998 to 2001, it became very clear to me that the intended democratic control of our church, per the church manual, Article 23, Section 1, local self-government, was being imposed upon by the Mother Church. The book talks being given then in bookstores had strayed so far from a Christian Science lecture was supposed to be that it was alarming, to say the least, as was the director's obvious belief in their own infallibility. I confronted these challenges to the best of my ability at the time, but so few seasoned Christian scientists in the church seemed to get it that I eventually stopped attending in person and started just calling in on the phone every week when that new service was initiated, for which I've been most grateful. My discouragement and disillusionment with the Mother Church over the years has grown, though my love of Christian Science has never waned. Thankfully, one Christian Science practitioner mentioned to me a number of years ago about the bookmark and the red and blue books, along with the many other so-called unauthorized literature items available, all of which saved me during these many years in the wilderness of knowing something in the Christian Science movement was amiss and losing interest in reading any of the current publications. While I have read other early workers' writings over the years, I'm excited now to be pursuing the publications by Eustace, Kratzer, Ross, and others that you make available on your website. And a recent weekend Bible study that clarified the controversial subject about Mrs. Eddy indeed being the woman clothed with the sun in Revelation 12:1 was so refreshing, as that has been very confusing to me over the years due to the contradictory input I've received. Over these last decades, every time those at headquarters would tamper with changing things, i.e. changing the periodicals, varying the number of sections and citations each week in the lesson sermon, using versions of the Bible other than the King James Version, producing a new hymnal, etc., not to mention the horrendous financial mess they've created and utter lack of ethics, I would have feelings of unease, to put it mildly. But I could never understand why there weren't other local Christian scientists, many who are lifelong and/or multi-generational scientists who seemed to have the same red flag feelings that I was having. Who was I to be questioning the Mother Church? Furthermore, no seasoned Christian scientists or practitioners have previously been able to explain to me satisfactorily about the estoppel clauses. And being a very literal person, the church manual never made sense to me, with all the references to Mrs. Eddy's approval being required. I had read Helen Wright's book, If Mary Baker Eddy's Manual Were Obeyed, but with no one local being of the same understanding, my wilderness and feeling of being alone continued. However, when you published and promoted the 1910 coup article, and I heard your discussion about it online, I was beyond thrilled to find kindred hearts. I purchased a copy of the 88th edition of the Church Manual right away, and after comparing it with the 89th edition carefully, I can see now more clearly what happened when those disobedient few hijacked the Christian Science movement upon our dear leader's passing, causing the devastating damage that we are all now witnessing. I was saddened, though not too surprised, to hear recently about the discouraging visit to the Mother Church that Mary and Florence mentioned. And now, having attended your church services, Wednesday evening testimony meetings, Bible studies, and roundtables for several weeks, I couldn't be more grateful to have found a worldwide group of clear-thinking, wide-awake Christian scientists who are following our beloved leader, Mary Baker Eddy, and her true and pure teachings. I also greatly appreciate your unselfed love for our world and your focus on our beloved America and her invaluable and true place in the world. Anyway, this letter is simply meant to let you know how very grateful I am to have found Plainfield Christian Science Church independent. Happily, my Christian Science study has received a huge jump start as a result of the inspiring history of your church, as well as inspiration gained from your incredibly dedicated band of working Christian scientists and your prolific and wonderful broadcasts, audio recordings, articles, publications, and testimonies. I am exceedingly grateful for your profound love and respect for and dedication to our beloved leader. Your genuine love for Christian Science and Mrs. Eddy rings so true and makes all the difference. And I so, 10 O's, love your magazine, Love is the Liberator, with its most special cover that you've preserved as Mrs. Eddy would want it. Please accept the enclosed donation as a small token of my appreciation. I look forward to meeting many of you in the weeks, months, years to come. And thank you in advance for the upcoming Christmas Eve service that I am so looking forward to. Merry Christmas to all. With much love and gratitude. Well, that was an exciting letter. We're very grateful that you found us. And now this is, I read it at the round table, but not everyone has heard it, so this was also something we received recently. Not sure where this person is from, but anyway, he writes, "Hi, I have been greatly blessed by discovering your excellent website and all the great Christian and Christian Science material on it. So I felt impelled to send you and all your Plainfield Church members an electronic Christmas card even though I have never met any of you personally. The second attachment is a very interesting article I discovered in a fairly old academic article in a secular science journal on Albert Einstein and Mary Baker Eddy's Christian Science. The article is by a fairly prestigious academic institution, which is the University of California at Berkeley. Thank you again, and God bless you for your great work. And in looking this fellow up, he seems to be quite a scientist in his own right. So I can't show you this electronic card, but I'll read it to you, what he wrote. He has some very beautiful pictures in it. Electronic Christmas card to the members of the Christian Science Church, Plainfield, New Jersey. You have greatly blessed me this past year. Keep up your great work. And then he has a beautiful picture of the Star of Bethlehem, and he says, Some believe it was a divine holy light arriving at Bethlehem at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second, from a supernova god caused many thousands of years before. He's a scientist. He studies all this. But what's important is that the light was indeed from God, and that it signaled the coming of Christ on earth in the form of Jesus. And I know this really happened, for who else besides God's Christ could have brought grand good, the good of very grand people like you, into my life? So God bless all of you saints at this season, and I pray every one of you have a truly satisfying New Year. So that was very beautiful, and the article about Mrs. Eddy and Albert Einstein is most beautiful as well, and Jeremy will post this for us. And it's called Einstein and Eddy, on Albert Einstein's interest in the metaphysics of Mary Baker Eddy, and it's by William S. Cooper, Professor Emeritus, University of California, Berkeley. And it's a very objective and beautiful writing about that. So we're running over time, but I can't end without something I was thinking about this week. First of all, thank you for the beautiful readings tonight, and so beautifully read. Thank you very much. Mrs. Eddy had said that some of her best workers were those that had been literally raised from the dead, brought back from the grave, she would say. And we know that to be true in our church too, and actually most of us have been, as you, those of you who follow us and have heard the testimonies, people who were either so physically ill or emotionally ready to give up on life. And they found this church, they found this way of living, and it raised them from the dead, brought them back to life. And in doing that, they have given their life back to God, because they wouldn't have it if it weren't for Him. Mrs. Evans, the practitioner in our church who led us through the law case, through the Red Sea, as I call it sometimes, she told us a story that she had been raised in Christian Science. She'd seen a lot of wonderful healings. Her brother was healed of scarlet fever. I think she had a healing of a broken bone. But as a young adult, she drifted away. She strayed, and then she was hit with a life-threatening disease. And she came crawling back to her practitioner and vowed to God that she would spend the rest of her life scrubbing the floors of this church if she had to, if she could only be healed again, healed once more. And she was healed. And she kept that promise because she certainly faithfully served this church for many years, giving her whole life, dedicating her whole life to this science. And that's what this church is about. It's not a fly-by-night thing. It's not something you dabble in. Once you realize the power of God and the wonderful titanic power He is capable of, as Mrs. Eddy has said, well, how can you just dabble in it? It becomes the most important thing in the world, the pearl of great price. And in giving our lives back to Him, tremendous healing takes place, not only for ourselves, but for all who we come in contact with. It's powerful and it's real. And I'm so grateful tonight for all of you everywhere that have found us. It's just wonderful to be with you all, and have a good night.
Thank you.